What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 192.
192.
On this Friday, July 18th, 2025. 43 days until kickoff, just a shade over 6 weeks. We are getting ever so closer. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Friday, recapping SEC Media Days in Atlanta. I was out there for the week in Atlanta. We got to talk about it all, what Brent Venables had to say, what John Mateer had to say. Everyone in the league, anything that jumped out to us, we'll break it all down from SEC Media Days. We also got the preseason poll today, of course, and the preseason all SEC teams. Not a lot of Oklahoma love there. We'll react to that a little bit as well. We're getting close. Fall camp less than a couple of weeks away or so. We're starting to turn that corner. Football season is nearing, and we are very, very excited to get things kind of started here in the very near future. Want to pump it at the beginning. New thing we're doing here. Subscribe. I talk about it all the time at Oklahoma247sports.com. Promo code for podcast listeners only, SoonersPod60. That's 60% off a yearly subscription. 60%. Wow. All you got to do is put in that promo code, SoonersPod60. So you're not going to see that advertised on social media or anywhere else. You only know about it if you're watching or listening to the pod right now. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. SoonersPod60, 60% off a yearly membership to Sooners Illustrated. So, and I'll bring that back up later in the show as well to remind everyone. So you don't have to do it right this second. You can keep watching or listening, but do that. Great, awesome deal. We're excited to be able to do that here throughout the rest of fall camp and into the season as well. So we're very excited to bring that to you. Guys, I was in Atlanta. Tom was supposed to be in Atlanta as well. Had some flight snafus. So it ended up being a one-man show for me out there. But it was good. I mean, it was cool. It's cool to get, kind of the unofficial start of the season as we get a little bit closer. Programming notes, obviously, I did the show with Colin on Monday. The three of us are here today. We're going to circle back on Monday. I figure Monday is when we could start our position preview series because that'll do 2 positions a week. It'll take us right to the week 1 of the season if my math bears that out. And so we'll start that on Monday. That'll kind of start to really gear toward the start of the season, and then we'll get Colin back in here later next week to kind of get back into the recruiting stuff and get back on a normal schedule throughout the rest of the fall here, rest of the summer, I guess I should say, going into the start of the season. But guys, it feels good. I mean, Media Days was a great way. It feels like we're getting close to the start of the season, does it not? I mean, we're starting to get the juices flowing a little bit. Preseason poll, we'll talk about that in just a second, but season's getting close, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to plan out my calendar, especially in the off season, just because there's so much space for us to fill.
Yeah,
I came back from taking some time off last week, and it's like, oh man, fall camp's 2 weeks away.
It's close. Yeah,
it's time to start up the preseason previews and all that. But yeah, man, it goes by real quick, and 43 days away from the opener now.
Yep. Feels good.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this is right where I get started with all of my football stuff. This is the time. It's here. That's pretty much how I see it. Getting ready, getting prepared. Like you said, that we're gonna have some other things going on the podcast coming down the line with the position previews, things like that. All the preseason talking season stuff is happening now.
We are in talking season right now. Yeah,
it's here. Time. So it's football season's here. We're gonna get to see the team actually on the field in a couple of weeks as fall camp starts. It's time, man.
It is. It's exciting. Media Days in the rearview mirror. Fall camp up next, coming up very, very soon. I mean, the opener's on August 30th. So obviously, if you're going to get 4 weeks of practices in, you got to start. So that's coming up here in just a couple of weeks. And we'll dive into all fall camp when we get there very, very soon. Like I said, position preview series, we'll start that on Monday. Today, just before we started recording, we actually delayed recording by a little bit because the preseason poll and the all SEC preseason teams came out. So before we get into some Media Day stuff, I want to start there. Oklahoma picked 10th in the SEC preseason poll. Nobody on the all preseason first team have 2 second-team selections. Jay Knott, the running back, obviously transferred from Cal, then defensive end Mason Thomas, and then long snapper Ben Anderson got selected to the 3rd team. So only 3 selections total, guys, 1 on each side of the ball, no first team, and they got picked 10th. Not that I thought Oklahoma was going to get picked to win the league and have lead in first teamers or anything, but this was not nearly as friendly as I honestly thought it was going to be. A lot of guys you can make arguments for got left off here. Just a quick reaction here. I mean, again, a little bit of disrespect here, frankly. I mean, 10th in the league. I don't know if 10th in the league is what Oklahoma is looking for going in. I think if you finish 10th in the league, you're probably pretty disappointed with your season if you're Oklahoma going in.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to keep in mind like how deep the SEC is. Oklahoma finished, what, 12th, 13th last year? And that was obviously a very disappointing season. They hope to do better than that. But I think like once you get past like that top like 4 or 5 in the league, you could slot anybody in like 6 through 12 and make a compelling argument for them. And I understand why there's a lot of skepticism about Oklahoma. Obviously, the defense is in a good shape, considering where Brent Venables has gotten it to over his first 3 years, and they bring back a lot of pieces. They do lose a couple of key pieces, obviously, and Danny Stutzman and Ethan Downs and Billy Bowman. But you look at what they bring back. That unit's still expected to be very good. Top 10, top 15 caliber unit. Offensively, there's just so many questions. I mean, this was a historically bad offense last season, and
right.
We've beat it like a dead horse, the numerous reasons why the offense was that bad. Now the question is whether that was a one-off anomaly type thing, and whether Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer and Jaden Ott and a more experienced offensive line and a healthy receiving core can make that unit tiers and tiers better than it was last season. And I get why a lot of people have questions about whether that will work, especially like Ben Arbuckle, hotshot name, 3 years of experience, has done well each of his 3 stops. John Mateer last year was one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the country. But again, it was in the Pac-2 against what was mostly a group of 5 schedule. Like, these guys need to prove it in the best league in college football for people to start believing in them. So I understand why, Oklahoma came in 10th there. I personally had them, I think, 7th in my ballot.
That's about what I expected.
Yeah, I could see them finishing higher, and I could see things, going worse if the offense doesn't work out. Like, it's really difficult to get a gauge on where this team is right now.
Yeah, 7th place is where I kind of feel like I would have put Oklahoma as well, because you guys talked about it. Some of those teams, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, South Carolina is like where you start getting into it. Those are some of the good teams I think that you could slot to be, top 6 in the conference. I think Oklahoma could come in right after that, given if everything goes, as the plan for Oklahoma. I mean, there's so many additions that we've talked about to ad nauseum from what they had last year to what they have this year, along with you're hoping that they're going to be more healthy. And so that adds to it. Now, the thing that I feel like brings a lot of people back is because of how tough Oklahoma's schedule is. I mean, the schedule looks pretty daunting on paper. I mean, when you look at all the teams that they have to play, and we've talked about that as well. So that's kind of where I see it. I think 10th is a little low. I think Oklahoma would finish in the top half of the SEC if everything goes right. But 10th seems a little bit disrespectful. I mean, that's where I see it. So
yeah. I don't even know if they need everything to go right. They just need to not have everything go wrong like last year. Like, you can have some injuries or you can have some hiccups here and there, but it seems like everything would go wrong, did go wrong last season. And to James's point, I mean, look, the schedule, toughest schedule in college football, according to ESPN's SP Plus. I mean, that is something that I'm sure a lot of media members took into consideration when trying to figure out where to slot Oklahoma.
Sure. No, definitely. 6 through 10, Florida, Ole Miss, A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma, kind of feels interchangeable-ish. Like, I would have had Oklahoma higher. I'm not as worried about the preseason. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's a preseason poll. It doesn't matter that much. No. Arizona State was picked dead last in a preseason poll last year in the Big 12 and won the Big 12. Like, it doesn't mean much. I'm more really struck by the preseason teams. I mean, nobody on the first team. I thought R. Mason was almost a shoo-in to be a first-team guy, and obviously he wasn't. Nobody was. And I expected John Mateer to probably be third team. I thought Kip Lewis, Robert Spears-Jennings, Eli Bowen, Tom, I know you mentioned him before we started recording. Like, those are all guys on the defense. I mean, one defensive guy on a defense that we all think could be one of the better ones in the SEC. And that defensive line we talked about, you got one guy on the second team. Like, I thought, I was a little surprised more by that. I mean, I thought 10th is a little low, don't get me wrong, but the sheer lack of preseason selections, I get it's a really deep conference. There's 16 teams, and a lot of good teams, but especially on the defensive side, I thought a few of these guys, Kip Lewis, a big one, he should be at least third team. But again, it doesn't matter. Doesn't mean much, no, but maybe Oklahoma uses it as a little bit of fuel. Who knows? But I would think you'd have enough motivation after last year, I guess. But, What can you say? What can you say?
I mean,
But
John
Anderson,
Mateer's
long snapper, getting third team. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, John Mateer's been getting like, fifth place votes from a lot of different, national outlets and things like that. Some of those guys that have been doing the
He's
work.
usually on like top 5 quarterback in the country lists.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like 3 of those other guys are also in the SEC.
Exactly. So that's where I was going with it. I mean, I think that's just a situation for him. Is the other 3 guys are in the SEC as well, so it's kind of hurting his stock there. But like when you see the other ones that show their full rankings of all the quarterbacks, you still see that John Mateer is a top 5 quarterback. So that's a pretty good situation for him, given that he hasn't played in this conference. I mean, that explains the hype that people have for John Mateer going forward. So,
who are the other quarterbacks, Tom? Do you know?
I got him right here in front of me. It was Lenore Sellers first team, Garrett Nussmeier second team, Arch Manning third. And
our hype has gotten away from us a little bit, but I got you.
Yeah, I mean, I was honestly surprised that Arch wasn't a little bit higher, but I like it. It's hard. Personally, I had Garrett Nussmeier number 1. I think it's really down to like 5 quarterbacks in this league that are going to get the most attention. It's those 3. It's John Mateer and it's DJ Lagway. I mean, that is a strong group. I'm a big believer in Lenore Sellers, but I was surprised that he came in number 1. Just he's still kind of raw. But just in terms of, athletic freak, if his development continues, he's going to be unreal. He's probably going to be a first rounder next year. But to your point, like I was surprised that a little bit more guys on defense didn't make it. You mentioned Kip Lewis, Eli Bowen. You can make an argument for some of those other defensive linemen or Robert Spears-Jennings, but then you look at who else made it, and I think part of the issue for Oklahoma is that some of their best players are at positions that are like the deepest in the SEC. I mean, you look at the first team defensive line in the SEC. It's Colin Simmons from Texas, who's just an absolute dude. Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, just another stud. Keldrick Falk at Auburn, another guy that's probably going to be a first rounder. Christian Miller at Georgia. I mean, that is good. And then, second team, you have R. Mason Thomas on there. You have LT Overton and Tim Keenan, the third from Alabama, and then Caleb Banks from Florida. I mean, it is a stacked position. And the SEC has been known for its defensive line play. So I don't think R. Mason, like landing on the second team, is disrespectful by any means. I mean, that's where he finished last year. And a lot of these guys all came back from last year too. So I think it's just more, speaks to the depth of the defensive lines in this league that, R. Mason Thomas was only a second teamer.
No doubt. That's fair. So we'll see. It's all talk. It's all fodder, off-season fodder. But I don't know. I just talked myself into, I guess maybe foolishly, that I expected a little more love there. I would kind of caught me a little off guard. 10th place.
Were you looking for like Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams, guys like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Kip Lewis is a big one for me. Robert Spears-Jennings, definitely. Again, I'm not looking for first team here necessarily. I thought R. Mason would be first team, but third team for these guys, I thought was totally on the table. But
I thought
John Mateer's gotten so much hype that I thought he would sneak on there. I know it's tough because there are other, but the Mateer hype this week in Atlanta, high. I mean, the guy is the talk. It was like outside of Arch. He was kind of the talk of the week in Atlanta. It seemed like, but
especially when you listen to the analysts on SEC Network, a lot of those guys were incredibly high on John Mateer. I think a lot of people are buying into what him and Ben Arbuckle and some of these pieces they had around them are going to be able to do. And I think if Oklahoma can answer that question, like they will finish a lot better than 10th in the league.
Right, no doubt. So. Off-season fodder, and we'll see how it shakes out. We'll compare, contrast at the end of the year, see what we're working with when we get there. Do want to recap SEC Media Days a little bit, though. Obviously, in Atlanta, great week. Got to hear from Brent Venables and, of course, John Mateer, R. Mason Thomas, Robert Spears-Jennings. Obviously, there was lots of other Oklahoma flavor there as well. Obviously, you have your Jeff Lebbys and your Josh Heupels, but then Jackson Arnold was there. Brandon Thompson was there. So there was a lot of Oklahoma kind of conversation kind of happening the whole time. It seemed like the whole time I was there in Atlanta. A few things I want to make sure we touch on. Let me first start with Brent Venables. He gave an update on Javonnie Gibson, which I know this was a big question going in. Like, can we get him to give us a hard update? He kind of did on Javonnie Gibson. He said he was on schedule, said he's out of the boot after breaking his leg, back at the end of spring camp. The exact quote here, I have it. He's out of the boot. He's on schedule. He did say he's not full speed just yet, but that he shouldn't be, right? He's still trending positively. and he said he would let us know when he's full speed. So, I mean, a good update there, right? I mean, Brent Venables has said back in the spring and then at SEC spring meetings that, the plan is for Javonnie to be ready for the start of the year, right? I mean, what does that mean? I don't know. Does that mean week 1, like full go? But he said he's on schedule, right? So, I mean, if he's on schedule and continue to move the right direction, at the very least, no setbacks, right? That's really the thing that jumps out here. So a good update there, right? Because, I mean, Javonnie's a guy that we all think after Deion Burks is probably the next wide receiver you're really kind of expecting something from when we get to the season.
Yeah, I mean, before he broke his leg, at the end of spring and kind of a freak incident there. I mean, he was kind of the talk of spring ball as like the guy that like was going to be that dude they can go to downfield and be a big play weapon for John Mateer in this offense. So it's obviously, promising news that he's still on schedule, that he's out of the boot, that he's able to do, some minimal, team activity stuff, even though he's not full speed. And, we'll see how quickly that progresses. Because again, you got 6 weeks until the season opener. That is a good amount of time, but it's not a lot of time to kind of get full speed. I personally would, again, not a doctor or anything, but I'd be surprised if like he was out there playing like 40 snaps in the opener. But if you can kind of ease him back into things and ramp him up throughout fall camp and get him some good reps in that opener and, maybe have him ready to go for that Michigan game, I think that would be huge. But again, just the fact that he's out of the boot after, look, this is an injury that, they compared to, Kendall Dolby's. And we all know how bad that one looked in person and, kind of how it took him into the spring to really get going again. And, this is almost a similar timeline. You look at Kendall Dolby's and it was, mid to late September. I think it was like September 28th something. Yeah.
Tennessee game. Yeah. And
then, you see him out there in the spring. Obviously he's not going full contact, but he was out there running around in March and April. That's, 7 months. You look at going from, or 6 months, whatever it is, and you look at going from early April until the end of August. That is 5-ish months. So we'll see. I don't think his was as severe as Kendall's. At least that's the impression that I got. But I mean, it sounds like they're hoping that he'll be able to go week 1.
Right. It's a positive note. I mean, it's a positive note, but I mean, you also got to take precaution because I feel like we heard about a lot of the receivers last year as well. Just having those nagging injuries. I mean, more than likely it was those ligaments and soft tissue type situations. Because like for guys like Jalil Farouk, he came back and he was in the opener and played a little bit there before it actually got reactivated. But you talked about it as well with Kendall Dolby. A guy like that having the same type of injury and he was out there playing for Oklahoma. So when it's like bone breakage situations, Oklahoma seems to do better than that in the training staff department, but. It's a positive note overall, I think, just because of what Brent Venables said, and they have a new guy running the show over there in the training. Right, it's a new guy, so it's, you would think there'd be some different things happening now. So that's the way I see it.
No, that's for sure. And the different training staff, which Brent Venables talked about a little bit as well, kind of just the early impressions there and all that good stuff. But like he said, you hope that all change is good. You don't really know until you start to see it, but. Sounds positive on Javonnie, and John Mateer talked about it as well, saying that he admitted like it sucked a lot that happened for him, but that Javonnie actually lived with John Mateer for a while.
Yeah, John was cooking for him and
cooking him food and everything, and he said that like we can't have him able to do as much on the field as we'd like, obviously, but that they've kind of built that chemistry and that bond a little bit off the field, which is cool, right? I mean that's a good thing to hear, and QB. Cooking him up, cooking food for him is kind of funny to think about. But
do we think John Mateer is like a good cook?
That's a good question.
I feel like he has a specialty like of 2 or 3 dishes. I feel like that would be
I feel like he could probably grill some stuff up. That's probably where I'm at with John Mateer. I bet he could grill up some stuff.
Because like he's still a college kid. And I feel like in college, like people don't have like a wide range of like stuff that they're cooking.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously they have a nutrition staff that are like putting him on the right track and telling him what to do. So I'm just curious, like what's he cooking for Javonnie Gibson? Like what's his go-to meal that he was cooking up all off season?
You'll have to ask him in fall camp. I'm sure it'll come up. You'll have to ask him what he cooked up for him, or ask Javonnie. Hopefully we can get to talk to him at some point during fall as well. Some other stuff from Brent Venables from SEC Media Days I want to make sure I bring up. I was really interested going in. Colin and I did the podcast on Monday, and we talked about a chance for Brent to talk about Jim Nagy a little more. Obviously, Brent talked about Jim back in March, but they hadn't really done anything yet, and so it's been a few months now. They've been through some wars on the recruiting battles and things like that. And Brent, the word he used was loves Jim Nagy, and that the relationship has been good. Getting the front office staff together, and I thought it was kind of noteworthy. The thing that stuck out to me is that he kind of almost acknowledged like the recruiting has been a little hit or miss. This summer there's been some good, there's been some bad, but he pointed out that he envisions this front office and Jim Nagy, the benefit of that really starting to bear out over the next couple of cycles. Mm-hmm. That was kind of an important thing. So Brent Venables preaching patience a little bit when it comes to Jim Nagy and the front office staff, but cool to hear him just kind of get into that a little bit. Anything that jumped out to you there, Tom? I mean, it was, again, that was a big question coming in. There was a lot of Jim Nagy, and he was at SC Media Days as well, Jim, which was kind of surprising. I don't know how many GMs were there for these various programs, but Jim being very visible, to say the least, right now, and Brent kind of talking about it. It's going smooth. I mean, at least as smoothly as it can. At least it sounds like that's at least the company line.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm sure that there's some headbutting here and there, like anytime you're dealing with new personalities coming together. But he seemed really complimentary of the staff that Jim Nagy's put together. We've gone over their credentials and kind of what their experiences are at the various levels, scouting and recruiting and dealing with all that. And like you said, the addition of Jim Nagy and his staff aren't going to the fruits aren't going to bear out in this recruiting class. It's going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, because they were behind the eight ball when he got here in the end of February. I mean, it takes some time to get boots on the ground and kind of get those roots in there and build those relationships and get the scouting in place and identify how you want to build a roster going forward. And it's going to take some time, but Brent Venables was very complimentary of him. Like you said that he's loved working with him. I think they're going to be. I think he used the term "well-oiled machine" at one point to identify kind of how they view this process playing out for them. But I mean, so far it seems to be working well for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it works out pretty well. I don't think that Brent Venables wasn't on board with Jim Nagy being hired to help out. I would see a world where Brent Venables was, really on board about that. So for him to come in and maybe have, disdain for each other, I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, they're just going to help each other out. So that's the way I see it. I mean, Jim Nagy said they likely are going after guys with value, have the highest value. I mean, that's what they're doing. Right. They're not going after just going after 5 stars. If there's a 5-star and a 3-star, they're grade out the same in their department. They're going after the 3-star and developing from there. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the roster that are just like that. I mean, like John Mateer, a couple of guys like that. And so, like you said, you're not going to see a lot of what Jim Nagy does on this class. Although, like Matthew Nelson, a guy like that was a guy that they turned pretty quickly, after a month or so of reaching out to him. But I think overall it's worked really well for Brent Venables and Jim Nagy. I mean, when I was out there looking at them at Brent Venables' camp, they were working together. I mean, talking about different recruits at the same time, really, really talking and really trying to understand who's doing what. They were doing testing, things like that. That all plays a part in all of this. So I think it's going to be a good situation for the both of them overall.
As far as some player names that Brent Venables made sure to note yesterday, I'm just going to rattle off a bunch. Jay Knott, certainly a big one, as Tom was miming there. I'm just going to rattle a bunch of names off. You guys can go whatever direction as far as what stands out to you. But, Brent Venables, I feel like it's been sometimes there's certain instances, certainly, where he'll kind of just spiral into talking about the whole roster. Mm-hmm. But whenever he's given opportunity, he puts up names in particular where he doesn't do that, it catches my eye, right? Or my ear, I guess I should say, of players that Brent Venables is noting in particular. So I'm going to rattle off a bunch. He was asked about the tight end room. He immediately brought up Caden Helms. So this is the best stretch he's had of healthy football. Caden Helms is one of those guys I've talked about a bunch of times.
Yep.
He can play. He's had a bunch of injuries. He hasn't really ever been healthy at OU. So that was an interesting name. That was the first tight end that Brent brought up. Again, I always kind of make note of that as well. Mm-hmm. He also brought up Jaren Kanak, said he envisions a real role for him. What that means, I don't know, but sounds like Venables is in on the Jaren Kanak tight end experience. He named a bunch of freshmen that he thought could make an immediate impact. In particular note, Eddie Pierre-Louis. That was the first name that Brent Venables brought up when asked about some instant impact, or not freshmen, but young guys coming up on the roster. He basically all but said that Eddie Pierre-Louis will play. He didn't say start, but basically essentially said, yeah, that guy's going to be on the field this coming fall. He also mentioned Michael Fasusi and Daniel Akinkunmi, who we've also been very high on as well. So those kind of young offensive linemen. And defensively, when we kind of all expect David Stone to make a big jump, that's not a shocker there. But Marion Robinson, a name that he brought up, and then Reggie Powers, a name that I've heard a lot of positive things about as well. Reggie Powers is a guy that another one could probably be a cheetah if you need him to be. And, Brent Venables brought that up, his versatility. So a lot of names he brought up. That was just some of them. Anything jump out to you guys from that pool of players? Because I thought there's a couple names that were a little semi-surprising to hear him kind of pull and bring up as guys that Brent Venables at least is mentioning as instant or at least impact guys this year that maybe we aren't talking about as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a couple more that you didn't mention. Like Cortland Guillory is a guy that Brent has brought up several times since the spring.
Right.
I think he's a guy that we're going to see play some meaningful snaps in that defensive backfield. Like you said, Reggie Powers, they really like him as a cheetah. He can play some safety, but I think long term, they view him as kind of that prototypical cheetah in that system. Ryan Foje, another freshman that Brent mentioned along the offensive line. And to me, obviously so much hinges on this offensive line because they were bad last year, right? Yeah. And obviously you had some promise, with guys like Troy Everett coming back midseason, Heath Ozida and Logan Howland and their development there. But then those guys missed the spring. By all accounts, they'll be ready to go for fall camp. But I'm so curious to see how things shake out because it just feels like they have more options. Like viable options on the offensive line. And I'm curious what that starting unit's going to look like. I don't think, we've seen in years past Bill Bedenbaugh, take some time for him to kind of sort out the starting lineup. Certainly last year, took way longer than anybody would have hoped. And a lot of that was because the offensive line wasn't playing well. But they don't have the kind of runway they had last year with their schedule. Like they need to get this sorted out early. So it's like, where's Eddie Pierre-Louis going to fit in? Because, we saw him at left guard in the spring, but if Heath Ozida is healthy, is he going to move to the right and push, Fabechi Wiwu for that starting job? Where's Jacob Sexton going to line up? Where is, Logan Howland going to fit in? These freshmen, are they going to? I don't know if they're going to be ready to go day one, but I think you're going to see, guys like Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foje, get some reps, especially against some of those teams early in the schedule, like a Temple, like an Illinois State, like what's the other one? Kennesaw State?
Kent State.
Yeah, Kent State. I think those guys are going to get some opportunities for some reps. Now we'll see, what kind of meaningful reps they get once the SEC starts. But, there's just so many questions about that offensive line. And, I think there are some talented underclassmen who could earn some real opportunities this year.
Mm-hmm. Defensively, I'm really, I'm a fan of Danny Okoye getting this hype train as we've been seeing as of late. I mean, Brent Venables has talked about this guy since the Army Bowl last year and last season, showing that he had signs of improvement. And so him to mention his name again, that shows really, how he's doing, on the football field as well. So it's really good. He talked about how he's a great athlete, which is what I've been saying since he was being recruited out of high school. He was doing backflips just standing in the huddle sometimes.
He's a freak.
Full pads. That guy is incredible. And then Trent Wilson, a guy like that, we got to see him in person, and that guy, he looks menacing. I mean, we talk a lot about how violent Danny Okoye can be and what he put on film. Trent Wilson is another guy just like that. He has the size and it seems like he has the ability already. So those are some of the names that kind of stood out to me when Brent was just naming those guys off. I mean, it looks pretty good on the defensive line. I mean, there's a lot of hype for Oklahoma's defensive line anyway, so those two guys getting some recognition there is a good sign.
For sure. And then like Tom said, a low-hanging fruit, but Jay Knott continues to get a lot of love, a lot of praise. Brent Venables called him, a home run hitter, which, I mean, look, he acknowledged, explosive plays, just not a thing for Oklahoma's offense last year. I mean, they couldn't do anything. But really in this entire Venables era, there's been a little bit of a lack of the explosion from the running game. And look, the running back room last year wasn't a problem, and it wasn't going to be a problem. You have talented players there, but I'm not sure if they had anyone that you could really get one of those kind of game-flipping plays potentially from. And Jay Knott is that, and that hype has continued. Brent Venables clearly is very in on Jay Knott. And, I asked Sean Mateer about Jay Knott too and talk about he loves the game, puts a lot of time in and, going to be a great addition, all that good stuff. So, it's the Jay Knott trend. I'm excited. Hopefully, we'll see what happens when we get to fall camp. We hopefully get a chance to talk to Jaden at some point here in the near future, and we'll obviously get to see him at fall camp. But I think that you can almost pencil in. If there was any real question, it sounds like Ott is almost definitely going to be at the very top line of that running back depth chart when we get there. But the hype train for him continues to grow too over the last couple months.
Yeah, and I had a story on the site this morning about those explosive plays. I mean, you look at the numbers and it was bad. I mean, Oklahoma was, I think, tied for 131st out of 134 FBS teams in terms of plays of 20 plus yards, and that's passing and running. And now
they had a bunch against Maine too.
Yeah,
like most of theirs were against Maine.
And like out of the last 9 seasons, like 5 or 6 times, Oklahoma's been top 10 in that number. Like this is a traditionally explosive offense. Even when Brent Venables has been the head coach, they've had offenses that can pop big plays. But last year was just so bad, and you're hoping that obviously Ben Arbuckle coming in, he had one of the top offenses in the country last season, but adding John Mateer and Jaden Knott, who last year Mateer himself, I think, was responsible for like 50 plays of 20 yards or longer. And that's, running and passing. Jaden Knott hampered last year with that ankle injury, but the year before, I think he was like 11th among FBS running backs in terms of 20-yard plays. So, I mean, these are 2 guys who can, create those explosives, those fireworks that you want out of an offense that just, was setting off duds all last season. So, they're really optimistic and hopeful that, last year was just an anomaly and not the start of a trend.
Right. I think it's pretty cool that Brent Venables even mentioned Javonte Barnes has been helping Jay Knott a lot, just getting the transition. So like doing that as a starter of the running back room and like bringing in a guy that who basically could challenge you for that role, helping him out. I think that's pretty cool. Shows that what kind of teammate Javonte Barnes is as well along that running back room.
No doubt. No, that's a great point as well. So, that running back room going to be a fun one to watch, too, because you still got Taylor Tatum floating around. Obviously, Xavier Robinson. Be a fun position. We'll talk about that position on Monday in the position preview series coming up here in just a few days. Let's talk about John Mateer's day a little bit as well. Obviously, like I kind of mentioned earlier, a lot of hoopla around John this week. The hype for him has just been growing and growing nationally all offseason. I mean, I joked about it earlier, but it's true. I mean, any list of top 10 quarterbacks in college football, he's definitely on it. And a lot of times in the top 5. I was surprised he got left off the All-SEC team earlier today. But like we said, there's some other really big name QBs that are in this league that are on it. John Mateer continues to that continues to grow. And he talked about, he was very open. He had a great press conference, by the way. His interview is on the YouTube channel. He was fantastic as he's been. But he was very honest about, like, I've never had anywhere close to this amount of hype or attention. Like, I didn't have any in high school. I was barely recruited. I played at Washington State. And so he acknowledged, like, it's a little odd. Like, it's a little strange, like, national media talking about him this much and everything. But he's Oklahoma. Like, that comes with it. He tries to just not worry about it, not look at it, that sort of thing. But I was really impressed with John Mateer again. He just, again, it's not going to matter if he doesn't do it in games and he doesn't play well. But he has been just everything Oklahoma needed in that position, from like a leadership and going back to him cooking for Javonnie Gibson, like everything that they've needed from that position. Because, I mean, last year, and it's not to knock Jackson, but, Jackson, I think his confidence was shaken, and he's a young guy, and I think you want your quarterback to kind of be leading from the front, and they didn't have that last year, frankly, and John Mateer is definitely that. He had a really nice run, I thought, in Atlanta this week.
Yeah, and I think back to the day before spring practices when we first spoke to John Mateer,
right.
And he walks into the media room there, and he's just like, I've never done an interview around this many people, and obviously there's even more people there in Atlanta when he's talking. A huge crowd around him, just like there was around ours, just like there was around a lot of the quarterbacks that were there in Atlanta. But the way he's handling it, he seems unfazed by the attention. I know he's trying not to like feed into it. Talked about staying off the social media on his phone and limiting his screen time and all that. But the attention is going to be there one way or the other. Whether he exceeds expectations, meets expectations, or falls short of them, he is going to be under the microscope this season just by the nature of being the quarterback at Oklahoma, where there has been this Heisman pedigree and where he's being constantly compared to one of those guys in Baker Mayfield. Like, the attention is going to be there. I think he's handled it really well, kind of, with the deftness that we've seen him kind of, handle running offenses. Like, he doesn't panic when, plays break down. He, improvises. He does well. Brent Venables said it's like, watching someone playing fast forward. And I think Mateer had a quote about, it's about organized chaos. And just kind of trying to slow things down when everything is being sped up. But, the way he's handled it so far, I mean, I think it's been really impressive. All the expectations and the hype surrounding him, he has his own expectations for himself, and he knows what he needs to do to meet that. He has his process. He's trusting that process, and realizes it's more important now than it has been, in any of his prior college football seasons. So I think he's ready to meet the moment, and kind of prove himself in the SEC.
Yeah, I think he's handled it pretty well, like you said. I mean, even when we've been talking to him, he's shown that he's had a sense of humor, and that's shows some comfortability in a tough situation, a tough spot. And that's, for a guy that's, experiencing that for the first time, that's a good sign that he's able to do that. So, I mean, he talked about being compared to Baker Mayfield. He said it's an honor. He's not necessarily going to try to be him, but sure. I mean, it's an honor to be in that situation. And so I think he recognizes what's going on around him. And that's a pretty good sign for Oklahoma going forward, because quarterback's going to have a lot of, it's going to be a big spotlight on the quarterback. That's for sure. And I think John Mateer is handling it pretty well so far in all this talking season stuff that we've been doing.
I think it's pretty safe to say that John will be someone that we in the media lean on this season. He's a great interview, and we look forward to talking to him again in fall camp at least once, and then obviously getting close to the opener, and it's gonna be fun. He's again, I say it over and over. He's got to do it in games, but he is very close to being a really household name, frankly, in this state and in the country. He's kind of moving that direction without having really done anything yet, obviously at Oklahoma. So it's exciting. And again, his interview is on the YouTube channel. I recommend it. Great get to hear from him on really kind of a lot of topics, the whole roster, talking about Brent Venables and everything. Good to hear from Mateer, of course. As far as SME days, though, just kind of wrapping up here. Any other takeaways? I mean, there was a lot, right? I mean, I never know. I try to hit the biggest things here. There's so much. It's always you come out of media days and it's like, did we cover everything? There's so much that happens. Obviously, Robert Spears-Jennings, Arm Basin Thomas were also there. I mentioned all the other teams. Was there anything else you guys wanted to make sure you brought up on the show? I want to make sure I give you guys the opportunity to do so if you want. It doesn't have to be Oklahoma, too. It could be another team, anything.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things to me that we didn't cover, obviously, Jackson Arnold was a big story this week.
Yeah.
Being there for Auburn, his second media days in a row, just with a different team this time. And after, everything happened last season, I thought it was interesting. It wasn't on the main stage, but it was when Brent Venables was in the electronic room. He talked about, he's still a big Jackson Arnold fan, has a lot of love for him and his family, and tried to get Jackson Arnold to stay at Oklahoma. And I know, but toward the end of the season, he talked about still believing in Jackson and wanting him there. But I think this is the first time in the 8 months since Jackson left that Brent Venables has publicly acknowledged that they not only wanted to keep him, but they actively tried to keep him. But he also acknowledged, look, he probably needed a fresh start, didn't want to speak for him, but Jackson said those same words a day earlier that he felt like he needed a fresh start after the way everything happened last season. He feels like he's in a good position at Auburn. I think when you factor in everything that went wrong for Oklahoma last season, I think he's in a better situation at Auburn this year. They have very good receivers. They have a good offensive line. I expect him to be better. I don't know how good he will be, but I expect him to be a lot better than what he showed last year. But just that Brent Venables is still believes in him as a player and thinks he's going to be playing this game for a long time. Said the same thing about Michael Hawkins Jr., who's obviously going to be backing up John Mateer this year. Right. But to say that about a guy who had his confidence shook last season and just crumbled in some situations and then left the program kind of abruptly, to still have that relationship and that affinity and that respect for him, I think speaks a lot about both sides.
Yeah, I was struck by that too. Unsolicited at the main podium, where he brought up the receivers, and he nobody asked him about Jackson, and Brent made the point to say, I want to point out, like basically kind of giving him like a pass. Like the offense was terrible last year. It was not Jackson Arnold's fault, and like that was kind of cool, I mean, because again, unsolicited, and like you said, I posted not Jackson's full interview, but I edited it down to just the OU relevant answers on the YouTube channel. He had nothing but nice things to say about OU. I mean, it's still very amicable, and he said he looks forward to coming back. He acknowledged it'll be weird being on the other sideline in the visiting locker room, but like he looks forward to it, right? And it was kind of funny. He had a little bit of like a wink of like, I asked him, about Brent Venables facing that defense in an actual game. He's done it in practice, but doing it in the game. And he kind of joked like, I'm sure he'll throw something at me I'm not ready for, and I got to just roll with the punches. But so it seems like it's a pretty good relationship, which was a question for me going in because, it ended kind of, it would seem kind of sour, but it sounds like it really didn't, all things considered. So pretty cool there.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. Even if you include guys like Bauer Sharp, he was kind of like, it wasn't necessarily just those guys' fault. I mean, we had a lot of different things going on. And so that's pretty cool, I think, overall. What do you guys think? You think OU fans would be okay with Jackson Arnold balling out in Norman as long as Oklahoma gets the win? Do you feel like that is how they feel at all?
No, they want that defense to dominate that game.
I think I talked about it, and we talked about most important or must wins or whatever. I think like Auburn going in Norman, and even if Oklahoma wins, if Jackson has a big game, that's going to really, really bother OU fans. So no. Emphatically no.
But I do want to add, like, while Brent was saying that they wanted to and tried to keep Jackson, I think ultimately it worked out best for all sides. Like I said, I think Jackson's in a better situation now than he was, with everything last year, and I think Oklahoma upgraded at that position, being able to bring in John Mateer along with Ben Arbuckle. So I think it's something that when we look back on it in a year, it's gonna be like, yeah, this made sense for everybody.
Yeah, and look, I mean, obviously, I don't misconstrue what I'm saying that I'm saying Brent Venables is lying, because he's not. They certainly probably did want Jackson Arnold back, but not to start. Like John Mateer was going to be the guy. When Ben Arbuckle's the OC, that right there, John Mateer is going to hopefully come with you. I mean, I'm sure in a perfect world, I mean, Jackson Arnold would occupy the spot that right now, like Whit Neubauer's in, if you had a choice. But it makes sense. Like Jackson's going to obviously pursue an opportunity where he could see the field. So, like Tom said, makes sense for both parties. In perfect world, would Oklahoma keep them both and just have John Mateer come in? Obviously, but that I think everyone kind of knows that's not exactly a realistic scenario, But anything else from media days that stuck out? What about Steve Sarkisian walking up to the podium?
Oh, that was bad.
Unbelievable. There was a lot. I mean, it was great to hear from Brennan Thompson too, Mississippi State. Obviously, he was there with Jeff Lebby and talked about, again, kind of same thing, very amicable with Oklahoma. No like hard feelings there or anything. Just kind of felt like he wanted to kind of get a fresh start somewhere else. And obviously knows Jeff Lebby and everything. And so that seemed to kind of just make sense for him. Jeff Lebby talked about Brent Venables and how he has a lot of confidence that he'll turn it around and stuff like that. I mean, Oklahoma was coming up a lot, it seemed like over the course of the week, but good week in Atlanta for sure.
And then Eli Drinkwitz just made everything awkward on the last day.
Dude. The worst. He made a joke. I wasn't there, right? I flew out Thursday morning, and I saw a picture, and I was like, man, it looks empty. It looks like a lot of people left. Yeah. And Drinkwitz made a joke about there not being anyone at his press conference. And it's like, well, yeah, that's why I was here on Thursday, I guess. They stick you on Thursday. That's how it goes. But
I mean, hearing about Nick Anderson and his car wreck, I mean, getting back from that, just hope he's all right. I mean, that's pretty much kind of like the last of it, I guess. Garrett Nussmeier said a lot of the receivers run like 40-yard dashes, like 4.4, 4.3 type situation. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know that they
Who doesn't these days?
No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I do.
Oh, you okay?
What about Nussmeier saying that the LSU players like to bust Bauer Sharp's chops about interception?
The interception, yeah.
That's incredible. I wondered if it would be is that like a sore subject? Like, don't bring it up? Like, no, apparently they bring it up all the time, which is pretty funny. But Brent Venables also unsolicited brought up Bauer Sharp and talked about like he's going to have a great year at LSU, and like, fans are going to basically kind of feel silly that they ran him off. Essentially, is kind of what he said.
I was going to say, in the DB that picked off Bauer Sharp in that LSU game, didn't he transfer from LSU this offseason? if I remember correctly.
I think so.
I think
that sounds right. I can't remember where he ended up, but I think that sounds right. That'd be really great if you had to like look him in the eye every day. But what can you do? It's a great week in Atlanta. Lots of coverage on the website. A lot of coverage. James, Tom, Colin Kendi as well. And obviously our national team as well. CBS Sports brought a lot of content. Also, it was a great week in Atlanta, and we're turning the page. We're on to the kind of the season now. Fall camp is just a couple of weeks away. And I'm not sure when local media day will be and things like that, but it will be soon. Obviously, the next couple of weeks, we'll hear from Brent again to kick off fall camp, and it'll be that time. So, again, I want to make sure to remind you, subscribe, Oklahoma247sports.com.
There it is.
Sooners Pod 60. If you're listening on the podcast, all one word, just like it sounds, Sooners Pod 60. Put that promo code in. You get 60% off a yearly subscription, a year subscription to Sooners Illustrated and 24/7 Sports, the entire 24/7 Sports network. So phenomenal deal there. It's the perfect time because fall camp's about to start and the season coming up here in the next 6 weeks. So Sooners Pod 60, please subscribe and come hang with us. It's going to be a really fun season. I'm excited to get this thing rolling, and we'll be doing so here very, very soon. Monday, we'll be back. Position preview series starts. Quarterback, running back, right at the top, like we always do. We'll kick things off on Monday. We're going to do 2 positions every Monday, and we'll cover them all leading right up to week 1 of the season. So that's how you know we're getting close. We start to get into the position previews, and we'll be getting ready for the start of the season here coming up very, very soon. So excited for it. It's going to be a fun year here at Sooners Illustrated. That's it for now. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you next time Monday right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.